Continental Baptist Missions. Aren't you the guys that build church buildings?
Well, we do build church buildings, but we do much more than that. That's what we want to talk about today.
Welcome to Destination Missions, the YouTube channel for Continental Baptist Missions. I'm Brad Hoff, the Director of Church Planting Ministries for CBM.
And I'm Dallas Putnam, the Director of Building Ministries with CBM.
When you think about the ministry of CBM, there are three words that you ought to keep in mind: plant, revitalize, build. Those three words capture what it is that missionaries serving with Continental Baptist Missions do. We have missionaries who are starting new churches in places where those churches had not existed before. That's church planting ministry. Revitalize, that's the second part of what we do. We have other missionaries who are not starting new churches, but are coming alongside existing churches that maybe have been in existence for a number of years, but are struggling to survive. And as the word suggests, they try to revitalize, to bring new life to those churches. And then the third aspect of what we do, Dallas, is
the building ministries, and we have missionary builders that raise support just like a church planter to go out and be able to build. And the building ministries is really a support ministry for church planting and church revitalization.
I've heard one of our missionaries describe it this way. They suggested that the term church planting would encompass all that CBM missionaries are doing. Some of our missionaries are working on the pastoral side of church planting, and others are working on the construction side of church planting. That's maybe not a bad way to think about what it is that we do, but we make a distinction between planting a new church, revitalizing an existing church, and yes, the building ministry helps in both of those cases. Dallas, as an example of how the building ministry helps a church planter, I could point to my own experience before becoming the field director for CBM. My wife and I were involved in church planting. Our last church planting ministry was in Sioux City, Iowa. Our church plant, Good News Baptist Church, met in a storefront for a number of years. And over a period of time, we were able, first of all, to purchase some property that was strategically located in our target community. We purchased that property with the help, with the guidance of the man who preceded you in your ministry role right now. Jim Henning was the director of building ministries at that time. He helped us select the right piece of property, and I think maybe more importantly, helped us avoid selecting the wrong piece of property. And as you know, that can be a problem.
Yes, absolutely.
And then when we came closer to the time to build, you were in this ministry role at that time, and you helped us as we developed a plan for our building. But first, before we developed a plan for a building, you gave us some advice that I look back on as really the most significant piece of counsel that we were given, and that was that we plan our ministry. We develop a ministry plan before we developed a building plan. We were to plan out our ministry for the next 5 to 10 years, and how did we see that ministry going forward, and then design a building that fit that ministry.
As you have a ministry plan to work with, it's really easy to design a building because the building design flows right out of a ministry plan. And then when the building's built, you don't have to try to fit the ministry into it. It's designed as a tool for the ministry that you're already doing.
We started early on with a floor plan that had kind of been suggested to us. But as we looked at that floor plan, we realized that it was not designed for our ministry. It would have worked, but we would have had to make a couple of places in that floor plan. We'd had to make them work for the things that we do every week. And so that was kind of a principle that guided us. We designed the building to fit the things that we do every week as a church, and then we would make it fit, we would make it work for special occasions. And I think sometimes that kind of gets reversed.
Yes, and I often remind churches when we're working with them that the church sets in the pews or sets in the chairs, that building is a tool. And so it needs to be a tool designed to meet the needs of the ministry. I often say that plumbers don't buy power miters and table saws, and finished carpenters don't buy pipe wrenches and pipe cutters. And so you need to design that building as a tool for what you're doing in ministry.
So the CBM building ministry helps a church planter in that design phase. And Dallas, I think most of the time now, you or one of the other men who work with you in the building ministry will actually take that floor plan, then the building design that results from the ministry plan. You take that, and from that, then you men can develop a set of blueprints that can be used in the actual construction.
Yes, we go in and most of the time spend an entire week with the church working through what they're doing in ministry and designing a floor plan to be able to fit that. And then we bring that back to the office and start construction drawings. In each case, we have to find an architect or a structural engineer that will give enough hands-on supervision to those drawings so that they can both legally and ethically seal those drawings. We talk about it as we're talking with architects and engineers back in the old pencil drawings days. When they would have somebody hire out for somebody to do the drawings, they would call them a rent-a-pencil. And so we kind of act as the rent-a-pencil to the architect or the engineer. And in that way, often we can up front save a church $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, depending on the size of the building, just doing that legwork for them with the design and working with the architect or engineer.
So moving beyond the planning phase, then, is the actual construction of a building. And that's when the CBM missionary builders actually arrive on the scene. In our case, there were 4 CBM missionary builder families that came with the fifth wheel trailers that they live in, came to Sioux City, set up on in our case, they were able to set up right on our building site, and they entered into the construction of the building, but it was much, much more than that. We refer to our missionary builders as missionaries, and indeed, they are missionaries in every sense of the word.
Our goal is to come alongside that church plant or that revitalization, that established local church that we're assisting, and assist them in the ministry. And while assisting them in the ministry, together we build a building.
The builder families who came and worked with us did a great job on the building. The finished product is a wonderful building, but their ministry impact in that community went well beyond just the construction of a building. My wife and I had the privilege of going back to that church plant 12 years after the building project, and it was for a special celebration, an anniversary for that church plant. As people shared testimonies that day, their memories of their involvement with the church plant, there were several, Dallas, who 12 years after the fact talked about the impact that the CBM builders had upon them in their spiritual life, in their walk with Christ. Is that unusual for that to happen on a building project?
No, that is very typical. The builders often have opportunities to share the gospel with subcontractors, suppliers, those that are delivering to the project. They have opportunities because of people from the church family that maybe aren't as regular to church as they should be, but they come out to help on the project. The builders have some real one-on-one discipleship time while they're building together and can really build into the lives of those people while they're there constructing a building. They can actually help build a real church.
When we were preparing to build, still meeting in the storefront, but developing plans and really looking forward to that day when we would have a building of our own, a point that we stressed with our church family and repeated a number of times was that a building does not build a church. We didn't want our people to develop the mindset that, well, if we only have a building of our own, then boy, we'll really take off and we'll really grow. We didn't want that mindset. We wanted them to understand the building doesn't build the church. The things that we did in that storefront, we preached the gospel there. We saw people come to faith in Christ there. We didn't actually baptize them in our meeting place, but we baptized them while we were using that meeting place. We'd find other locations for that. But we were fulfilling the Great Commission in that rented facility, and it had its drawbacks. It was not a beautiful place outside. It wasn't beautiful. It was okay inside. It was pleasant and comfortable inside. But we're not just about building buildings, and the CBM building ministry isn't just about constructing buildings, thinking that, boy, that is the thing that makes a church grow. It's just a tool. It is just a tool, and when we're working with a church, trying to determine whether or not we're going to assist them, one of the things I really caution, if I pick up that they're looking at this building to increase their attendance, I really caution them on that, because when you get into a new building, yes, often you have some interest from the community to come in and visit, but the thing that really builds the ministry, if they're not already discipling people, building into lives, a new building is going to have a really short-term effect on growing a congregation, and it'll grow with some width, but not have any depth to it if it's just because of the building. That's an excellent way to put it, Dallas, that it might grow in width, but not in depth. We stress with our people that a building doesn't build a church. Now, in our case, we found that it made a bigger difference than what maybe I had anticipated. And yeah, there was some of that was kind of a new building surge, if you will. There were people that were curious, people in the community who drove by during the construction process and saw the new building being built, and that in and of itself is something of a testimony within a community. So they came and checked us out. They didn't all stay, and the depth, of course, comes from the teaching of the Word of God. Thank you for watching today, and remember those 3 words that describe the ministry of Continental Baptist Missions: plant, revitalize, build. This is the first of 3 videos that will be talking about those ministries. So if you liked this video, stay tuned for the next one, but also click the like button on this one and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Destination Missions. That helps us out.